Hey guys, so I know this is going to be a little different than what we're used to. Obviously, I didn't have the chance to present to you guys in class, and so I have coordinated with Gail to set up a video presentation so that way you guys can see it, learn, and still get the best out of my presentation. So today, as you can see, I will be doing my article on the intersection of African American English and Black ASL. Now, before we get started, who knows what intersectionality means? Anybody? Anybody? Intersectionality? Kind of like the weaving. So pretty much to me, intersectionality means you have different layers. And so within yourself, you're going to have different levels that are going to kind of define who you are. So for me, for example, I am a Black, male, queer, and among other things, but those I'd say were my top three. So among the different sections, as you go deeper and deeper, it's how they intertwine, how they interlace, and how they work together to make what you see right in front of you as a person. So pretty much the intersectionality with this report is finding those linguistic similarities between between African American English and Black Sign Language and how they kind of like meld together and continue on. And so this article touches upon some of the varieties of American Sign Language that are used by people of color, and then also relating that to African American English and how they can intertwine, interlace, and continue on to today. Also, too, we look at the data that was collected and kind of see like what specific varieties or developments that took place to be able to find what we know as Black ASL. The states that were surveyed were more in the southern region, and so with that, it was a lot of states that still had racism, segregation, poor management, and treatment of African American individuals. Now, of course, we all know the age-old question. No, 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 hell no. So is American Sign Language universal? No. And so with this, of course, there's a bunch of different varieties from place to place, state to state, country to country, and how they have their own sign language, their own syntax, grammar, and what have you. And so with this, it touches upon if Black ASL is the same as regular ASL or how you may see it. Now, there is a quote that goes along with this that I kind of took from the article, and it reads as this: not only are there as basically many sign languages as there are viable deaf communities, sign language that exists alongside the spoken languages of the majority communities, but also these sign languages are also differentiated according to social criteria in the same way spoken languages are. End goal: if there's as many spoken languages, there is many sign language, maybe even more. Because remember, sign language has started a lot with gesturing until you put actual wording and meaning behind it. So there could be any sort of number of sign languages. And so specifically, we're going to be talking about Black ASL. Also, too, this article is part of a larger ongoing project to describe the linguistic features of Black ASL and some of the varieties used that we see from African American English and how they show up in Black ASL. All right, so the study. So as you can see here, the study was conducted with approximately 96 African-American individuals from the Southern United States. The data collected was based on the 6 out of 17 states, which are Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, North Carolina, Texas, and Virginia. So those 6 states is where the 96 individuals came. It was free conversation. It was very easygoing and just be able to talk and socialize and see how the language is used instead of a formal interview section. That way you have no restraints, no boundaries, and can just sign as you will. The signers were divided into 2 groups, which I will go into later, more of like the younger versus the older. And then among the linguistic features that they had studied, 2 became prominent, which we'll go to in later, but just to be able to see like the differences and what each language offers and how each are different as well. So as you can see here, these are the 6 states along with their years that the white school was founded, the Black school was founded, and when they both became desegregated, right word. And so as you can see here, bunch of different years in between, all differences and whatnot. And so as you can see with, Louisiana being at the bottom, so they were one of the last ones to be the segregated and both the Black and white schools coming together. As you can see, once again, 96 Black signers divided into two groups. Now, one of the things that, of course, we've studied along with learning ASL and throughout our journeys here is that within the deaf community, obviously some have more opportunity than others. Others have either come from a deaf family, have had generations through the years, so it's just ingrained in their brains. But unfortunately, some don't, especially with young Black deaf individuals. They don't have the resources, the education, or the means to get what they want and have the proper education as opposed to their white counterparts. And so with this, it led to different skewed varieties of ASL and the progression of that. And it was a variety that was formed just out of the basic, I don't want to say neglect, but just the not as progressive education of Black deaf youngsters and their counterparts. So with Black ASL, it is more of formed not out of not being recognized, but more of kind of like that the segregation and then the divide that happens between Black education and then white education and how they intersect. The author actually of this article had reportedly talked about when she was first integrated into a white school, how she had to put away her home signs in some of her language so that way she could better focus and understand what was going on. She had reported it feeling difficult to communicate both with the students and the teachers, and that they found it very challenging. And although they were still able to make it, it was still much of an obstacle that they had to overcome, much like the people of color do today. And so now we move on to what features were examined. So again, if you remember, I said that there were 8 features. Pretty much these 3, as we'll go through, were some of the top ones. So pretty much how the effect of Black ASL had with spoken English and how that intersected and integrated itself. Voiceless mouthing. And so of course, when learning sign language, our mouth morphemes, I believe is how you say it, and how it conveys tense, tone, and any sort of grammatical additions to our signing. So with voiceless mouthing, it wasn't until later on that it was noticed with certain groups that some would voice more than others. And so with that, they took a more focused look at that section of the language and decided to look and research more into how voiceless mouthing or voice mouthing would play a part into it. Also too, and how it incorporated that from African American English as well as Black Sign Language. Okay, so going on voiceless mouthing with the first. So the first major distinction was with mouthing and the events that are kind of derived from it and how mouthing gestures were part of the sign language and if they had any sort of relation to them. Going to number 2 is specifically with whether or not the words were fully mouthed or just partially. Was it they're mouthing the words themselves or a morpheme to enhance that sign or enhance the conversation itself? The third major issue is talking about the relationship between mouthing and grammatical functions, like the class or how Englishy it can be to be mouthed, or again, as I said, if it's specific to the sign or if it's just signed English and mouthed English. All right, and then as you can see here, a table from the article kind of explaining the mouthing and grammatical functions that were studied. Now, if you want to take a guess as what these mean, so what the 3 letters mean. You have OBM, YBM, OBF, YBF. What do you think? Well, I'm going to tell you anyway, in case you haven't gotten it. So OBM, easily old Black male. OBF, old Black female. Now on the opposite side, OWM, old white male, or OWF, old white female. And again, the younger counterparts. And so this kind of goes into detail with what specifically they were looking at between the different nouns, verb, predicate, WH words, and how they are mouthed and whatnot. And then as we go through, you'll see that certain classes had mouthed more or not, as opposed to some of the younger generations which don't at all. Moving on now to African American English features. And so it was just a tiny portion of some of the words, phrases, and whatnot that they had captured and that they saw was a major difference. So, for example, in Alabama, it was assigned to trip, or the phrase stop tripping. And so pretty much it is a bent V that goes from your forehead out. So, like, stop tripping. And then it was noticed that the signs were more exaggerated and used a larger signing space for Black ASL. The largest number of examples came in 2008 from Houston after the presidential election. So some of them were girl please, which pretty much simple, or my bad. Now it's not my bad, it's just my bad. So in conclusion, if you guys made it this far, which I hope you have, we can definitely notice a major difference between Black ASL and our regular, I don't want to say white ASL because I'm not putting labels on it, but the American Sign Language that we have studied and learned for today. Black ASL has certain lexical items, or there are of course different phrases or gestures that go along with it that make it different and can make it that much more noticeable. Black signers also support the idea, the common misperception that Black ASL uses more space than white ASL, which I have kind of seen, and especially with those Black interpreters that I've either observed, worked with, or just seen on TV, that they then tend to use a bigger signing space and have more facial expression or gesture with how their signing style is. And then going down, the younger and older Black signers definitely differ in how they incorporate African American English. And so, as we had said before, some of the younger signers do tend to mouth more than the older signers, who would either say nothing, mouth shut, no any sort of mouth morphs or mouth movement with their NMS. And lastly, Black ASL is still an ongoing research topic. It is one of those that is still freshly new to the world of interpreting and how it's being researched. And so with that, I had still taken upon the liberty myself to continue with looking into kind of like Black ASL, Black Sign Language interpreting, which leads me to my next clip. So, you say tokenism, I say diversity. This was an article I read on Street Leverage about people of color, BIPOC interpreters, and how the diversity comes into play with the sign language community. And so the title of it is Diversity a Mask for Tokenism in the Field of Sign Language Interpreting? And so pretty much it's creating more of a diverse group and field within the sign language community, with having more people of color interpreters like myself and more, especially males. And so with those two things going for me, I am very excited to be able to lend my services and have myself be one of the faces of a person of color as well as a male interpreter, at least within New England. And then having more people of color and BIPOC interpreters all together, it is one of those fields that is more woman dominated as well as white dominant. And I don't want to say dominant, but it's just more, how do I want to say it? There's more of a Caucasian, there's more of just a white presence within sign language community. And not that that is any sort of issue, but it does lend itself to know that it's more of a group or a career that is situated with one type of ethnicity, and that's what I'm trying to break with. And so breaking those boundaries, breaking those different stereotypes, being a person of color, and among other things being queer and being a male, are things that I take very much pride in and look forward to putting myself out there within the field and helping those that may be able to identify more with me, whether it's because I'm a male, because I'm Black, because I'm queer, all different aspects. And again, with that intersectionality for people to be able to recognize, feel comfortable about, and therefore have them use as an interpreter. So guys, any questions, comments, concerns? I hope not, but I do hope you guys enjoyed yourself and watching this presentation and going along with me. I hope it opened your eyes to some of the different topics and different ideas that are within the sign language community with Black ASL, African American English, and how you may come across that in your field. As always, I thank you guys, and I can't believe the year's over and we did it. We finished, and I hope to see you guys very soon. I will miss you all very much. One day I hope to both interpret with you all as well as Gail, and until then, I'll see you guys later. Enjoy the rest of your summer, stay in contact, and we'll see each other soon. Bye guys.